Meine liebe Schwestern und Freunde, dear friends, I don't know if Sisters Helen, Amalia, Dominica, and Ambrosia ever went fishing when they came to Racine. Food was rationed during the war. Meat was expensive. Meat-free Fridays seemed to come regularly. The lake was nearby, and jumbo yellow perch were often found along the breakwater. I can testify to that because those very same years in the 40s when the sisters arrived, with my dad, I was out on the lake during the summer doing exactly that same thing. But I don't know if they ever went fishing like Peter and the other disciples. But Helen, Amalia, Dominica, and Ambrosia certainly were disciples of the risen Lord. And they were inspired by a missionary zeal and a charity that was equal to that of the early church. I'm convinced of that. And it is precisely missionary work that this gospel story is all about. Bringing in new fish, ancient symbol for Christ, in large numbers without breaking the net of the community. And the risen Lord on the shore, giving directions for the catch, inspiring, encouraging, directing, baking pita bread on the hot rocks for breakfast, fresh fish, nourishing the disciples not only with breakfast but also with the Eucharist that those very things symbolize, and nourishing the disciples and also the four sisters with the kind of charity that they would be enabled to do the work of God for those in need. That same love has continued throughout the centuries, down to this very day, and this community in the welcoming shelter and charity and kindness that is embodied at St. Monica's. Dank sei Gott. Thanks be to God. So we give thanks and praise to God for this entire history, not only the centuries since the shore of Galilee, but also this ministry here of the Sisters of St. Rita at St. Monica's in Racine, which has not always been easy. The tragic loss of Sister Helen, the slow, careful work to save money, the help of so many good and generous, hard-working people to build the dream and keep it flourishing. True works of God are never easy. In fact, we are reminded periodically that a work, if it is really of God, geht immer langsam und deutlich. It always goes slowly and with some difficulty. But it takes root by God's grace and by our cooperation with God's grace. And for that we give thanks. Dank sei Gott. Like Peter in the first reading, we say, well, if you want to know how the healing of that lame man occurred, and if you want to know how St. Monica's home came into being, how it's been sustained, like Peter we say, it's in the name of the risen Lord, of Jesus Christ, the Nazarene, crucified, then gloriously risen, who is the true cornerstone for every human endeavor. For that, we give thanks. Dank sei Gott. And finally, I can't resist pointing out the fact that 40, is really a very important biblical number. Always a sign of some preparation for some new and wonderful gift of God. 40 days of the flood, and then Noah came out of the ark with all the family of animals for a new creation. 40 days of Moses on Mount Sinai, and then the gift of the covenant and the creation of a new people of God. 40 years of wandering in the desert until they stood at the banks of the Jordan River and went in to receive the gift of the promised land. With Christ's ministry, 40 days in the desert, being tempted and testing and solidifying his call and his response to that call, proceeding then to a public ministry that has shaped and formed the whole world. 40 days after the crucifixion and the resurrection to the ascension, periods of time in preparation for some great gift of God. So if we gather to celebrate, 100 years of the community of St. Rita from its origins in Bavaria and Germany, if we gather to celebrate 40 years of St. Monica's, that's a very significant number, because it reminds us that God could just be beginning to give so many wonderful blessings that we can hardly imagine. It's not only for the past that we give thanks, it's for the future, for everything that God can do with those who are trusting and faithful and cooperative with grace. Dank sei Gott. Thanks be to God. And so we rise. We rise to pray for the needs of the whole world in which we live, in gratitude for the work and gift of St. Monica's and those who staff it and serve it and animate it, and in gratitude for every good thing